The 2025 Florida legislative session was so exciting, it had to go into double overtime. Lawmakers were unable to wrap up the budget deal in the regular allotted time, causing the session to drag into mid-June before finally passing a $117 billion plus fiscal year 2025 budget and over $1 billion in tax cuts. Tonight, we'll go behind the scenes and get the real story with members of the local Northwest Florida legislative delegation. We'll get their input on the 2025 session and look ahead. We'll be discussing issues that are important to you and the state of Florida. We are live and interactive on social media, radio, and television. The 2025 Legislative Review Dialogue with the Delegation is straight ahead.
This original WSRE presentation is made possible by viewers like you. Thank you.
And a very pleasant good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm Jeff Weeks. In addition to our live television broadcast on WSRE TV, we're also streaming on Facebook and YouTube, as well as broadcasting on News Radio 92.3 FM and on AM 1620. We would like to hear from you. Now, of course, many of you have already sent your questions in for our legislators, but there's still more time. You can email us with your question at message, or message us at WSRE on Facebook. Now, let's meet our members of the Northwest Florida Legislative Delegation. Senator Don Gaetz serves District 1, which encompasses all of Escambia and Santa Rosa counties and a portion of Okaloosa County. Senator Gaetz was elected to his current Senate seat in 2024, but he is no stranger to the Florida Senate. He first served from 2006 to 2016 and was Senate President from 2012 to 2014. From the Florida House of Representatives, Michelle Salzman represents House District 1, which covers a large portion of Escambia County. Alex Andrade serves House District 2, which includes the southern portions of Escambia and Santa Rosa counties. Nathan Boyles represents House District 3, which covers portions of Okaloosa and Santa Rosa counties. Representative Boyles is a newcomer to the local delegation. He was elected in a special election in 2025. Patt Maney serves House District 4, which encompasses part of Okaloosa County. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Thank you so very much for being with us. Senator Gaetz, welcome back. Great to see you again. Let me begin with you. I always like to ask this question kind of off the top. In your judgment, what was the high point of the 2025 legislative session?
The fact that it finally ended. It was the worst legislative session I've ever been in. We made history, but not in a good way. The good news is, I guess, that we finally got a budget. The good news is that the budget spent less than it spent the year before. State government is spending less and is being a good steward. But the bad news is that too much infighting among us Republicans caused the legislative session to go on too long. Most of the time during the double overtime, we weren't there, so it wasn't costing the taxpayers money, but still, it was an embarrassment.
Representative Maney, give me your thoughts. What the high point for 2025 in your judgment?
Well, I agree with the senator. We cut the budget. The president of the Senate said he wanted to cut the budget. The Speaker of the House said he wanted to cut the budget. And the governor said we needed to cut the budget. So we cut the budget, but it took a while to balance the different equities involved, and that's what took so much time. It was my first opportunity to be the chairman of a budget subcommittee, so it was a great learning experience, and I think I did a good job, but we did succeed in cutting the budget. But 105 days, 60-day session was a long time.
A lot of work. Representative Salzman, your thoughts?
I'll just echo the thoughts of my colleagues. I actually thought that it was one of the most productive while not being productive. If you look at the fact that for the first time in many years, the chairs were told to comb the budget and actually meaningfully look at each line item and try to find ways to cut the spending, to find where we were overspending or maybe we were underutilizing the money. So I thought it to be good. I mean, I get it was long. I know there was a lot of infighting, and the media always makes it look worse than it really is. But at the end of the day, these guys, you know, Rep. Andrade, Rep. Maney, they worked hard to go through and find all of these discrepancies and really scrub the budget for the first time in many years. So it was a more meaningful budget process than it has been. I've been here 5 years, and in the past, we've just checked boxes. Okay, we know all that. Now let's move. What are we going to change? You know, this time we didn't just say, okay, we know all that. We said dive into each piece, each line item. I served in the Ag subcommittee, so I looked at that budget. I'm sure Chair Andrade will have some comments on the healthcare budget. It's the largest part, but at the end of the day, I think they did a really good job. I'm proud of the work that my colleagues did as well as that they did in the Senate.
Representative Andrade, your thoughts?
I'm generally terrified or nervous at least, and it's rare when I disagree with Senator Gaetz, but I think former Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia said it best when he actually testified before Congress, that our system of checks and balances, our separation of powers, might look dysfunctional to the outside world, but it's actually, that was the purpose and intent behind how our founders structured it. We saw, I think the top line story, at least at the very beginning, was the sudden divergence between the executive and the legislative branch. We'd been criticized for years about being a rubber stamp for the governor's office, and I think the initial narrative was a reassertion of the legislative branch as a co-equal, if not superior branch of government to the executive. So there was far more personal vitriol than I would have liked to see. I know everyone here at these tables did their best to avoid that specific personal vitriol, but I think that the tension, the disagreement, it yields good products. I mean, the biggest fight we had in the legislative session was over which taxes to cut first. I think that that's a sign of a healthy, albeit visibly dysfunctional government, but I think the ultimate product was good, and it was a result of that tension.
Representative Boyles, I don't want to put you on the spot because I know for most of the session you were on the outside looking in, but what was your overall perception as you watched and basically prepared? You'll be in the thick of it next year.
Yeah, well, I was hoping you were going to ask me my high point, and I was going to say, obviously, my swearing in on the last day of the extended session. But no, I think it was, you know, I was busy campaigning, of course, but I think it was really good to kind of be able to see, you know, the process, maybe as Alex noted, kind of really working so intensely. And so I think for me, it was an opportunity to kind of see the process, maybe less kind of discreet or closed, but really a lot of that kind of came out into the open. And I certainly hope we don't have a repeat of that level of intensity this year, but it was just a great opportunity to kind of better understand what I'm in for over there in this role.
Well, you mentioned tax cuts, and we have received questions from quite a few of your constituents, our viewers and listeners, and this is going to be a big one, and it will be talked about an awful lot. We were talking about it in the green room, so I'm going to tee it up here. We're talking about the possibility of what things would look like if we reduced property taxes or got rid of property taxes, as Governor DeSantis has talked about. So let me get you to kind of maybe describe what the whole idea behind it is and what are the possibilities of that happening. And I'll begin with you, Senator Gaetz.
Thanks. The property taxes are kind of like renting your own property from the government, and it doesn't feel good. It feels like people don't have control of their own property, particularly people on fixed incomes, people who don't have a lot of money. Property taxes can be a real burden, especially as they've gone up and up as values of properties here in the Panhandle and across the state have gone up. And what the governor is proposing is to reduce or eliminate ad valorem property taxes. My understanding is that there's about $50 billion in revenue that goes to local government from property taxes. So if you eliminate that $50 billion, either you have to believe that there's $50 billion worth of waste, or you have to believe that some portion of that $50 billion has to be backfilled with some other source of revenue. Therein lies the rub. Where will we get additional revenue if we eliminate getting revenue from ad valorem property taxes? So there are probably 10 or 15 different plans that are floating around out there. The House currently has a committee. I don't have the answer, but I think my prediction is that by the end of the session, we will have done something on property taxes. We have to.
Representative Salzman?
I look forward to seeing what the Special Committee on Property Taxes comes up with, and I'm going to support whatever my colleagues land on. They put a lot of thoughtful work into this process, really trying to dive in. They've traveled around the state, talking to other local governments, and really tried to understand where the money's coming from, what they're spending the money on. So I look forward to it. I know we're going to have some ballot initiatives. I'm certain that we will come to some sort of agreement between the chambers and that we will have something in front of the governor. Where that lands, I'm unsure at this point. You know, they just met today. They had their committee today, and they talked about a lot of different things. And the number one concern that I've heard is, how are you going to replace those taxes? And as a conservative, you know, I ran on just the most random thing of safety, infrastructure, education, and healthcare. And gosh, how are you going to fund that if you completely omit the taxes? Although I agree that we pay too much, and we certainly shouldn't hold somebody hostage in their own home.
Representative Andrade, your thoughts?
So I don't have a crystal ball. I could not tell you what the final product is. All I can say is that our system of property tax is probably the most unfair tax system that we have. Someone who lives in the exact same house, puts the exact same demands on the system, could be paying a fraction of taxes compared to their neighbor who simply you know, is guilty of moving into their home last year and having it reassessed by their local property appraiser. We need to do something. The concern that I have is similar to the fights that we had about property taxes, which we control, right? Sales tax, which we control as the legislature. We can pass sales tax changes without a constitutional referendum on the ballot. If there's too much public dysfunction, if it does look like we are acting like school children and personal animus and personalities are taking over, then the final product, regardless of what it is, when it goes on the ballot, it's going to be tougher to sell it. And depending on who gets their way and who doesn't, you might lose that coalition of folks who are fighting to actually pass that next November. So this is one circumstance where the public perception is a huge concern. I think our constitutional referendum process now requires 60% plus to pass, as Senator Gaetz astutely knows from being part of the Constitutional Revision Commission last time. And my main concern is the fact that we're going to put a lot of work into this session, and depending on how it's sold to the public, it may not pass.
And I think it's worth pointing out, it will take a constitutional amendment for that to change. Representative Maney, your thoughts on it?
Well, I think it's a very complicated issue. As Senator Gaetz noted, everybody's dissatisfied with the current system, but it's very, very complicated. I am the only person sitting here tonight that's on the House Select Committee on ad valorem tax reform. We've spent 2 days this week really getting better educated about the process, about the effect of different potential plans on the revenue and what that change in revenue would do to cities and to counties. But of course, there are fire districts that have ad valorem tax. There are fire districts that have fixed assessments. I mean, there are lots of moving pieces. Some small counties in population don't have a lot of land value that's not homesteaded. And so if you take that away, it becomes a major problem on how you're going to keep government functioning. I don't think local officials want, I think Tallahassee's what, 130 miles or so from Pensacola. I don't think people in Pensacola want Tallahassee telling them which roads to fix. At the same time, I don't think Tallahassee wants to be put in the business of funding local government either. So it's complicated. The House is going to work very hard in trying to better understand the process. We did have a proposal in the budget that was vetoed that would have called for a consultant group to do that work and give us a report. That did get vetoed, so we're in the House trying to get ready to meet the moment and figure out what we can do for the benefit of Florida. But there's a lot of enthusiasm for a cut. There's also a lot of angst about what that might mean in local government terms. People still want the police to respond when they're called, the ambulance to respond when they're called, the fire departments to respond, and all that takes money. And it costs more now than it did 5 years ago to have a fire department or police department. So there has to be some consideration to how we work that complicated Gordonian knot, try to keep from getting strangled by it.
Representative Boyles, you'll go into it. It'll be an exciting part of your freshman year.
Yeah, yeah, that's one word. So I think I agree with everything my colleagues said. I think what I would highlight is, I'm a local government guy. 12 years on the Okaloosa County Commission, and by and large, here in Northwest Florida, we have well-run, conservatively run local governments. Okaloosa County, third lowest millage, I think, in the state. And so I think it's important to, you've got all this DOGE stuff going on, some good work being done, certainly by our CFO. I think that's important work. I think it's also, we need to be careful not to conflate those two things and, treat local government as just inherently bad or inherently overspending, because it's not that way everywhere and across the board. And so I think it's really important that as we have those conversations that we recognize the nuance and we keep some distinction between the two. Do we need to kind of get our hands in, and there's some places that probably need some oversight and some help, being more fiscally responsible? Absolutely. But can that color, the outcome of this process? I hope not, because that could be detrimental to our local governments here. And, Representative Maney mentioned ambulances. I think it's important when you call 911, they respond. And I think what we don't want is a credit card swipe on the back door of an ambulance, right? I mean, those services are emergency services, and we need to be able to be ensured that those are being provided to our citizens.
So James from Pensacola is asking, you mentioned that maybe Tallahassee doesn't want to be in the business of local roads, fire departments, et cetera, but James is asking from Pensacola, why does the state legislature keep trying to take away rights and responsibilities of local government bodies? Example, eliminating property taxes, DOGE effort, et cetera. What would your response to him be, Representative Maney?
Well, I don't think Tallahassee wants to take over the role of local government. I think Tallahassee understands they're not well equipped to do that. I mean, just Okaloosa County is so different geographically. The beach area kind of has one, the Gulf Front area has one economy. We've got a huge swath of military property which is exempt from ad valorem taxes. Then we've got the north end of the county, which is actually our fastest growing part of the county. But they don't have as much money. It's still got a large agricultural area. So you really can't do one size fits all for the whole state. And that's why I say it's complicated. I honestly don't think Tallahassee wants to run local government.
Senator Gaetz, I'll throw the question to you. What do you think about James's assertion that maybe Tallahassee is a little too involved in local government?
Well, there's always the temptation that politicians have to believe that they know the answers. And that happens in the legislature as it does in local government. But the way that Florida is set up, local governments have substantial flexibility and authority. The issue sometimes arises that occasionally a local government will use that authority in a way that affects someone's rights, their constitutional rights. I'm thinking about Second Amendment rights or freedom of speech rights. And then there becomes a push on the legislature, stop that. You're the only people who can. And so from time to time, there's been an action by the state government to preempt local governments when it comes to constitutional rights. But personally, I'm with Judge Maney. I think we ought not to, if we want to run for the county commission, we ought to do what Nathan Boyles did and run for the county commission. If we want to be state legislators, we got plenty to say grace over in Tallahassee.
Representative Salzman, would you like to add? Representative Andrade?
I think, Senator Gaetz took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, a large majority of our preemption over the past several years has been related specifically to property rights. I think the biggest complaint we normally get is the somewhat minimal preemption we did over vacation rentals, simply saying local governments could not legislate them out of existence just by virtue of, not liking them. That's a dynamic between like a Burt Harris Act type claim, a takings claim on the use of lands and property rights, and us having to step in and say, no, local government, you can't dictate the length of a lease on a residential property simply because enough people in the same color shirt show up to your meeting. But by and large, yes, local governments have far more authority and ability to engage with the community on a daily basis, and we've not nearly tied their hands as much as people may think.
Representative Boyles? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would like to come back to something, if I may,
Please
that
do.
Representative Boyles mentioned, or play off what he mentioned. In Okaloosa County, I got the data from each city as well as the county. And in Okaloosa County, one city raised the millage rate, 4 or 5 lowered the millage rate, and the rest of them kept the millage rate the same. So I think, at least here in the Panhandle, we're a largely conservative community, and I think our local government does a good job. To some extent, one person's priority may not be the same as another's, but that doesn't mean that the project on which they disagree is a bad project. It just means at your stage of life or in your family, you've got children who go to the library, or you have adult children and you're retired, and you get your news off of an instrument.
Yeah.
So I think we need to be real careful about painting local government, at least in this part of the state, as being guilty of profligate spending.
Representative?
Yeah, I think, I spent 12 years kind of fussing about preemption, right, from Tallahassee as a member of local government. I do think there are times, as my colleagues mentioned, when it's appropriate, and certainly my goal will be, Tallahassee should not be preempting unless and until local government is preempting somebody's individual rights, and I think that's when we step in. I will also note that, there are times, so I'm a business guy, and, you do need this notion of some consistent rules across the state, right, and it's no different than the federal government's role in interstate commerce, and so I think there are times when there are matters that are better handled at a state level so that there is a consistent playing field across the entirety of the estate, and rather than having to figure out those rules as a business owner from one jurisdiction to another. And so we want to keep as much as we can at the local level, but those are going to be case-by-case issues.
This is from Rhonda, one of our viewers, your constituents from the Pensacola Beach Advocates. She says, "Dear legislators, Escambia has a hard time maintaining Pensacola Beach. We as beach residents respect that 100% of our beaches are public, and we want them to stay that way, being maintained by the county. However, we as residents would like a fee simple title to our property and would like to incorporate, because we feel neither SRIA, Santa Rosa Island Authority, nor the county cares enough about our quality of life." So her question is this: would you support efforts for a fee simple title and for incorporation if the proper process and sufficient data are met? Representative Andrade.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I would, so long as there was a vote of the people, and so long as there was a fair and appropriately managed election that shows that the people who live on the beach want to have an incorporation, then I'd support it.
Okay. Either of you like to add to that? But
I honestly don't. That sounds like an Escambia issue, and I don't know that I need to get into an Escambia issue, honestly.
You've got enough, right?
It's definitely a Escambia issue.
I know, I totally understand, but I just wanted to give you the opportunity just in case you.
I have Santa Rosa, actually.
I'll pass.
You have some commentary. Let's move on to a topic that has been very much discussed on a national level, and certainly in the state of Florida, and that's vaccine mandates. I'll begin with you, Senator Gaetz. Your thoughts?
Well, I believe that the scientific method suggests that when there is a conclusion or a finding that if there's new evidence or a confounding variable, that you go back and re-examine that finding or that conclusion. So if the Surgeon General has new evidence that all vaccines, all children's vaccines are either harmful or ineffective, I'm certainly going to keep an open mind and an open door, and he can present that evidence. But at the end of the day, I also want to hear from scientific sources. I want to hear from the medical community. I want to hear from parents. I want to hear from people who operate school systems, because this can't be a political question. It's got to be a scientific question. And there may be vaccines that don't have to be done as soon or as often or at all. But the whole notion of eliminating vaccines, I think we had a president of the United States who recently did a great big push to make sure that we had a COVID vaccine. So I don't think we Republicans want to jump right on the bandwagon to say all vaccines are bad.
Yeah. Representative Salzman, your thoughts?
I think the biggest issue that we as American citizens have, and at least my constituents and the ones that I talk to have, is the fact that you have a blanket immunity. So not only are we requiring children to get these vaccines, these companies have a blanket immunity, whether it be a new vaccine, an old, it doesn't matter. If it's a vaccine, you can't sue the manufacturer for harm done to you. It's a federal thing. There's nothing the state level can do about that. But to allow you to say, this is what you have to put in your body, oh, by the way, don't worry about what happens to you, and you can't have access to public school systems unless you get these, that's an issue, you know. And I don't believe all vaccines are bad. I also don't believe that all vaccines are good, and I believe in choice. So we had an instance happen here recently in Escambia County where someone's mother got injured, literally an actual injury. She was taken to the hospital, the emergency room, and they fixed her up. And the next morning they said, "How are you feeling?" And she said, "I'm feeling quite well, but my arm is sore." And they said, "Oh yeah, that's from the tetanus shot." What are you talking? Why am I getting a tetanus shot? I didn't tell you. She had never had a vaccine in her life. And the protocol was through the emergency room that she got the vaccine because she got the tetanus shot because she had an open wound, an injury as she came in. And that hospital actually fixed their protocol since this happened, but it begged the question, do we need to do some sort of statewide requirement that the actual patient says, yes, I want that, you know, yes, I want that tetanus shot. So I've looked at this a lot, actually. My district is the north end of Escambia County, a lot of rural. A lot of those folks, a lot of them are not very keen on being required to have vaccines. But I also don't think that you should mandate that you don't have vaccines. So, you know, there's a median there, and we just have to find that place. But I agree with Senator Gaetz. I mean, follow the science.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Representative Andrade?
The discussion at the state level has been noticeably different than the discussion at the federal level on this topic. I can tell you I was concerned when our Surgeon General, Joe Ladapo, in discussing why he was supporting this type of shift from an opt-out to an opt-in system here in the state of Florida, said he didn't need any scientific data. It's about parents' rights. Well, Surgeon General, I'm not going to you for your legal advice or your public policy or political advice. I go to you for your medical and scientific advice. And that in and of itself raises a red flag. Right now in the state of Florida, we don't require vaccines for someone to attend a public school. We simply have an opt-out system. We have a system right now where parents who do not want their children to be vaccinated can opt out of the battery of vaccines that are required, and their child can still attend public school. So I have not seen the scientific or the public policy, the good public policy reason why we should switch our entire system to an opt-in system versus an opt-out system, especially for some of these vaccines that have been around for decades, like the ones required by statute, like for measles, mumps, rubella, polio. Yeah. Those are required by statute. They can't be waived right now as a requirement by the Department of Health. What I do know as the legislator that sponsored the bill to prohibit the Surgeon General from vaccinating anyone by force, is that the concern after COVID of a non-FDA approved vaccine and the fact that the data is starting to show more and more that the government was lying to the public is raising greater and greater concerns than there ever should have been on this topic. What I hope the takeaway from all these kind of ill thought out COVID policy, public policy initiatives is you cannot treat Americans, law-abiding Americans, especially ones with children, as if they are not intelligent enough to understand the decisions they themselves should be making that are in the best interest of their family. The second the government starts treating citizens like lesser than is the second that distrust grows, and it's merited. And I think we're seeing the effects of that now.
Representative Maney, would you like to add?
I think I think all three of the previous members have said exactly what I think. Senator Gaetz and I are old enough that we remember when children had polio. My brother was a polio pioneer with Salk vaccine. We don't have polio rampant in our schools, and that's a good thing. That's why I like what Representative Andrade said of some of these are tried and true, and like Senator Gaetz said, if the science has changed, tell us. I also, not surprisingly, am conservative and value individual liberty. But there is a reason we don't have measles epidemics. There is a reason we don't have various illnesses that historically ravaged a population. And I don't think we should just willy-nilly throw that out without some articulable reason to do it. And I think, well, let me just finish by saying, again, as both Representative Andrade and Representative Salzman said, we have an opt-out provision in law now. If a parent says, I don't want my children to have it, we've got several different grounds they can use, religion and others. So to change the whole process, I think we have to have a reason to change it.
Representative Boyles?
Yeah, certainly. I'm not a public health expert, right? So it's an issue that I'm certainly interested in learning more about. What I will say is, really coming to this as a citizen, I didn't view our system as broken. As my colleagues have noted, there are opportunities for parents to do their own risk analysis, right, for their families, and then make a decision that they believe is best, and to take that opt out. And I think Florida probably was somewhat pioneering in allowing families to have that opportunity. And so I'm certainly interested in learning more and better understanding the issue. I just want to be careful before we kind of jump in to try and fix something that what we're fixing is actually broken. What I will say is that I hope we can turn down some of the political rhetoric around vaccines, and I think there are some legitimate issues to look at. I will tell you, we've had the personal experience of having children and starting to evaluate individual vaccines and then make a decision on a case-by-case basis. We've encountered what I could term as discrimination from healthcare providers who have said, well, that's great, your kids are no longer welcome to get medical care, and so you're going to need to find a new physician. And so I think those are some of the issues that I'm interested in looking at it. This thing, as we look at it in its totality, is we should be able to have that choice. I believe in this country and in this state, and not face discrimination as a result of that individual decision.
Very good. Adam from Pensacola just sent in a question. We'll start with you, Senator Gaetz. He says, in light of the recent committee vote chaired by Senator Gaetz that rejected the University of West Florida Board of Trustee member who remains seated, how should authority over leadership in Florida's public colleges and universities be balanced among the legislature, the executive branch, the Board of Governors / Board of Trustees, and the institutions themselves? Specifically, Adam wants to know who should have the final say on trustee appointments and removals, and what checks and balances should apply when branches of government disagree.
Well, we have checks and balances now. The governor can make an appointment. I chair the Ethics and Elections Committee in the Senate at the moment, and every gubernatorial appointee comes to our committee, and we can accept them, we can reject them, but if we reject them, the governor has the prerogative of being able to keep that person on for another year. Well, it's kind of like the appointments that a president can make. a recess appointment when Congress is out. Congress doesn't have the right to come back and say, well, you can't do that recess appointment, but the recess appointment is only good until the Congress comes back and can act. And the appointment of the particular trustee that the questioner asked about is only good until the remainder of the legislative session, and then if he is not approved to continue, he will have to leave.
Okay. Representative Salzman, any added thoughts or?
My biggest qualm with the way we have the system now is that it's not in the sunshine. You know, when we make these president selections, they're not done in the sunshine, and that was a law that we did. I mean, I voted for it. The incoming speaker sponsored it, and I regret that vote, but I echo the sentiments of Senator Gaetz.
Representative Andrade?
I agree with Senator Gaetz. I think that we do have that system of checks and balances. I have always thought of it similar to a presidential recess appointment in the same way. The governor has the power to make the vast majority of appointments to these bodies, similar to the way that the governor, bound by the Constitution, has to appoint a judicial nominating commission in order to have them submit a slate of judges that he can pick from to make judicial appointments. We have these systems already in place, and these checks. And ultimately, as I think we saw here in Northwest Florida, the ultimate check is the public, the voting citizenry. You saw a large public backlash that was relatively bipartisan from a lot of folks who were not happy with some of those appointments. So ultimately, I think that our system is set up to be practical but also balanced. I do not see this as a constitutional crisis. And I believe that if voters are not happy with those discussions, with those actions, they can make those opinions known at the ballot box the next time something related to that decision comes up on the ballot.
Representative Boyles?
Yeah, so I had the privilege actually of sitting in and watching Chair Gaetz work on that committee, and I'll just say the system, works, and there absolutely was there was both robust dialogue, and then there was I think a Senate committee that was mindful of its responsibility to serve that check and balance role, and I saw that work effectively. I think this you get the law of unintended consequences, right? If you start messing with a system like this, it's not. Is it ideal? No. Has it caused some frustration for folks? I get it, but on the flip side of that, other iterations of this system could result in seats sitting open for extended periods of time, and I think that's why you have the ability for that reappointment. Ultimately, I believe this issue will sort itself out, as Senator Gaetz noted. If there's a better system, I'd love to hear it. Again, this one's not perfect, but it works as well or better than any system that I've been able to come up with.
Representative Maney, your thoughts?
I agree with Senator Gaetz. And Senator Andrade, and everybody. We've got a system that usually, generally, normally works. We got to let the system work.
Very good. Senator Gaetz, you recently proposed a bill to per security in houses of worship. Tell us a little bit about that proposal and what you hope to accomplish.
Well, that's a proposal I had wished would never be necessary, and I hope will never be necessary in action. But religious leaders from Northwest Florida came to me and said, in view of all of the things that we're seeing in houses of worship in all denominations, because hate is no respecter of denomination. Because of all of that, we're doing armed security, but we want to do it within the law. So they pointed out to me that an armed security patrol, if it's hired by a church, is made up of people who get paid, who buy a license, who have to go through some state activities. And they said, look, in some of the small congregations, we just want to have somebody who's trained, who operates according to a plan that's approved by the local sheriff, who's been background checked, who has a concealed carry permit, who knows what they're doing, and not have to get an extra license or pay $300 or $400 extra dollars. Can you help us with that? So we put together a bill that does that, and now the bill is being introduced in the House as well. It's unnecessary until it's necessary. but I believe that houses of worship of all denominations have the right to defend themselves.
Representative Salzman?
I
Agree?
mean, I agree with him. I know where the bill came from. Yeah, yeah.
Representative Andrade, I just want to let anybody add any additional thoughts.
I think with the recent first DCA opinion related to open carry, this could be a legislative session that allows us to look at some of the restrictions that we have on the carrying of firearms in general and the place. And so long as those aren't already preempted by the federal government, maybe we should consider relaxing some of those restrictions and prohibitions on the carrying of firearms in specific places. So no, I fully support the bill, and I look forward to hopefully having a more robust conversation about where we can carry firearms in the future.
I'm going to get to that in just a second. Representative Maney?
I think we've just seen demonstrated the power, the depth of leadership in the Escambia delegation. I just hope the whole Panhandle delegation pays attention to their wisdom, because I think they're right.
Representative Boyles?
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense, so look forward to voting on it.
Very good. Open carry of firearms will be a big topic in 2026. As I understand it, currently you no longer have to have a concealed weapons permit, right? But you can't open carry at this stage in the game. So what would that change look like? I'll begin with you.
Well, no, actually right now, because our statute is set up to where there's a broad prohibition on open carrying, and then we have specific prohibitions on concealed carrying, right now, based on a strict construction of the statute, you can make an argument that you can open carry in certain places that you could not concealed carry because of that first DCA decision that came out recently. Florida's Attorney General issued an opinion stating that because he's not going to appeal that decision, open carry right now, today, is constitutionally protected and allowed across the entire state of Florida. The issue that we now have is there shouldn't be some distinction between whether or not someone carries outside of their belt or inside of their belt. And it's creating confusion for law enforcement. They don't know exactly where they can and can't enforce any type of restriction on the carrying of firearms. So I think we should provide at least some type of clarification just to make it easier for law enforcement to know what the rules are, so everyone understands what the rules are. But right now in Florida, it's the law that constitutionally you can carry your firearm wherever you're allowed to carry firearms, outside your belt.
Representative Salzman, would you like to add?
Well, I mean, I'm excited about it. I'm an open carry advocate, so I believe in the ability to carry constitutionally. Huge Second Amendment proponent. I think the lack of clarity in the law has created a lot of confusion, like Representative Andrade has said. My focus right now, I'm not carrying the 21 to 18 long gun bill this year. I carried that, passed it on the House floor last year. Right now I'm just looking at the campus carry model and what that looks like, and is there something meaningful that we can do as a legislature to create a safer place for students, faculty, and staff to go learn. So that's my focus right now, but I certainly support clarity in the law, but I like it. I like the Wild Wild West. So.
Okay. Senator Gaetz?
Well, having grown up in the Wild Wild West, Judge Maney and I were actually comparing notes in the green room about when we went to school back when we wrote on the walls of caves, that open carry among students was not only permitted, it was routine.
Yeah.
When we went to school, we had our shotgun rack in the back of the pickup or the car because we went out for the early morning shoot before school. We were going to go shoot some upland game after school. And so our shotguns were literally in the back of the car in the school parking lot. And as Judge Maney reminded me, we didn't have any problems. I think that that Representative Salzman is certainly onto something when she says that we have to look at where we are with campus carry. I don't believe in gun-free zones. We did a study a few years ago when I was sponsoring Florida's first open carry bill. It sadly didn't pass. That indicated that states that have open carry have fewer problems. and fewer gun deaths and fewer gun violence, less gun violence, you know, per capita than the states that don't. Now that doesn't prove that one thing causes another, but it proves a correlation, and that is you can't prove that open carry, in my judgment at least, causes any particular harm or damage or violence or threat.
Okay. Representative Maney?
I think this is an issue that it's in large part a distraction. I think it's clear the law needs to be clarified. Even the U.S. Supreme Court indicated that. So did the First District Court of Appeals. I think it's our responsibility to clarify that for our citizens, for law enforcement. But I think it's something that we just need to knuckle down and do. I am not afraid of open carry. I am concerned about things like guns and alcohol, whether that's on a college campus or in an entertainment facility. But I just think it's an issue that we've had too much controversy about for too long, and we just need to deal with it.
Representative Boyles?
Yeah, I mean, I think this will prove to probably be much ado about nothing at the end of the day. There was some discussion here earlier before we went live about late night westerns, and so it's no surprise to me where the DCA got on this issue, right? It's I think it's pretty clear that this is the tradition and history in this country based upon constitutional rights. I think my only concern always is I have a wife and kids, right? And so you want to make sure with those rights come responsibility, and so I think anybody that's out there that maybe doesn't understand that'll sort itself out pretty quickly. And I think what you'll find is that most of the law-abiding citizens in the state of Florida will respect and recognize that if they do decide to open carry, which is their right, that they have to do so safely and responsibly. And as long as we can get to that place, I think again it'll be much ado about nothing.
Senator Gaetz, I keep coming back to you, but you've been active here recently with a lot of proposals as far as bills are concerned. Veterans Treatment Court Program. Tell us about that.
This is a great opportunity for me to defer to Judge Maney.
That's right.
Judge Maney, the first veteran treatment court in this state, was named after Judge Maney in state statute. He is, as you may know, not only a former judge, but a one-star general, as well as a state representative. He is the pioneer of Florida veteran treatment courts, and I'm just his poor, second shotgun.
Well, Judge Maney, explain what it is.
Veterans Treatment Court is a specialty court, much like a drug court or a mental health court. It's a specialty court to treat justice-involved veterans, that is, people who are veterans who have transgressed the law, but it's designed to treat those veterans to give them an opportunity to get rehabilitated so they don't commit other offenses, and so that they can go on with their lives as law-abiding citizens. I think the recidivism rate has been proven time and again to be much lower for participants in Veterans Court. I'm very excited that we have one in 3 of the 4 counties of the First Judicial Circuit. They're all different because the judges are different, but they all operate under the same goal. And it's really just a wonderful way to recognize the sacrifices of veterans, people who have served, who have been hurt, usually in combat, but that it also includes people who have suffered military sexual trauma. But we need to give those people a chance. And one of the great things about it is we use the resources of the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, so the state of Florida is not paying for treatment. The state of Florida is just providing the system, the structure to give people a chance to, if they have PTSD, if they have traumatic brain injury, if they're military sexual trauma victims, where they can get the treatment and get on with their lives without having a criminal record that follows them and limits their future.
We are getting short on time. I have approximately 6 minutes left here, so I want each one of you to be able to add to this next question. I know you've been traveling around talking to constituents, and as you prepare for 2026, I'll start with you, Senator Gaetz. What are constituents telling you their top priorities are?
Property insurance, and property insurance. And then utility rates, and utility rates. And then property taxes. But I'm hearing more about property insurance than about anything else. Okay. And I'll be sponsoring legislation again this year to try to put guardrails around property insurance in our state. Last year I sponsored the legislation. It did not even get a first committee stop, but I'm going to try again.
All right, very good. Representative Salzman?
I think there's a lot of conversation around the school choice model and how we're implementing that, you know, excitement, not complaint. So very happy about that. Of course, a lot of the permanent tax holidays that we created, a lot of citizens are really happy about that. Looking forward, what can we do? It's the same conversations over the past few years. The attainable housing, you know, the price to live, the cost of living, how much does it cost for my insurance? Obviously, that's a huge one. So I send out a survey every year to constituents across the Panhandle, and it's going out next week. So usually by now I would have had it back. But you know, my litmus test, and just we've had our delegation meetings, is people are focused on cost of living. How can we decrease the cost of living, and how can we increase quality jobs so that folks can make their own living?
Representative Andrade?
Absolutely, cost of living has been a topic. The high price of first home ownership, the cost to buy your first home. We're seeing a lot of people coming out of college with out the job prospects that they expected to have after going to college, without the ability to even fathom buying their first home, putting the first down payment on their home. And then on top of that, once you have that home, the cost of your property insurance and property taxes keep going up. Just because I'm the chair of the healthcare budget specifically, I do get a lot of conversations about health insurance. And then because I had that unintentionally high profile issue, I do get a lot of questions about Hope, Florida.
Okay, very good. Representative Maney?
Well, I think the public in the Panhandle reflects the public of the state at large about what issues are bothering them. I would like to mention something a little bit different because of my job as the committee chair for the subcommittee on justice. The largest piece of that budget section deals with prisons. They have the most buildings, the most people, and about 80,000 inmates. So it costs the taxpayers a huge amount of money. So there are 49 major prisons in the state of Florida. This summer I've visited 10 of them. I'm really looking at how we can make the prison system work in a more economically smart way. There have been a lot of patches. Sometimes the patches cause different problems. That's not a jazzy, sexy issue.
Sure.
But it cost us a lot of money. And it's very impactful for the victims of crime, and it's very impactful for the families who have loved ones who are incarcerated. And that's something I think we owe it to the public to work on.
Representative Boyles, I have about 2 minutes.
Yes, sir. I will not need 2 minutes. I'll echo the sentiment of everything that was said already. I think the one I will add is really kind of growth in infrastructure and that tension, especially in everywhere in the Panhandle, but certainly, in my district, in places like Milton and Pace and Crestview, folks want to know that there is a system in place where we can have a robust and thriving economy, but they also want to know that we're, working in partnership with our local governments to provide them the tools and flexibility they need and the resources to make sure that we have the infrastructure that will match with that growth so that we can continue to maintain the high quality of life that we enjoy here. The only other comment I want to make is just to note, it's a privilege to serve with this delegation. I think it is probably a rarity to sit in a room like this and have, with my exception of course is the newbie, everyone here is a chair of a committee over in Tallahassee, and that really says something. I think there's a lot more representatives and senators than there are leadership positions, and the fact that this delegation has that depth of leadership says, speaks both to the quality of these folks and to the strength of the Panhandle.
Okay,
excited to be here.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you very much. I have 30 seconds here, and I just have to ask this question, and it may be the most difficult question of the night. I understand this came up in 2025 and may make a return in 2026. There's a bill apparently to make the flamingo the state bird.
I support that bill.
Are we going to lose our mockingbird?
No, I'm for the mockingbird. The flamingo is an import. Comes from somewhere else.
No.
The mockingbird. The
Flamingo,
mockingbird.
flamingo.
I try to stay right down the center, but I'm going to have to go with Senator Gaetz and the mockingbird.
Okay.
Thank you all so very much. We wish you all the very best. Our guests this evening have been members of the local Northwest Florida Legislative Delegation, Senator Don Gaetz, and Representatives Michelle Salzman, Alex Andrade, Nathan Boyles, and Patt Maney. Very special thanks to you, our viewers, listeners, and social media participants. We greatly appreciate your questions and your input. This program will be available soon at WSRE.org, also on YouTube, so please feel free to share. I'm Jeff Weeks, wishing you all the best, and thank you for watching. I hope you have a great fall and enjoy all the sunshine state of Florida has to offer. Very pleasant good evening, everyone.